Okay, so I'm doing associative learning, which basically revolves around two types of conditioning, classical and operant. Classical conditioning is when an animal performs a specific behavior in response to a substitute stimulus rather than the normal stimulus, which in a way that you can actually understand means, for example, an animal will learn to associate a certain sound with a specific outcome. A very similar test of this was done by a man named Ivan Pavlov. Okay, so an example of classical conditioning involves a scientist by the name of Pavlov and his dog. In his experiment, Pavlov would ring a bell, and he'd ring the bell right before feeding his dog. And so eventually, this dog associated the sound of the bell with food. So eventually, the sound of the bell would cause the dog to start salivating because it knew food was coming. This is a picture of the setup. This is his dog, and he's kind of like set so he can't really move. And whenever he'd ring the bell, the saliva would go down here, and then Pavlov would be able to tell if it was working or not. Right here's a little funny comic I found. And the dog saying, "Watch what I can do." As soon as I drool, he'll smile and write in his little book. And that's really funny. Okay, so the other type of conditioning is operant conditioning, which is the process of reaching a desired behavior or response to the use of consequences and rewards. An example of this would be clicker training a dog, for instance. Once the dog learns to associate the click from the clicker with a reward, he will be able to learn the tricks quicker through the operant conditioning process, because when he hears the click, he'll know that he's going to get a reward. And he'd be more likely to do this trick in hopes of earning a treat. An example of operant conditioning was done by a scientist named Skinner. The father of operant conditioning was a scientist named B.F. Skinner, and he invented a box which he humbly named the Skinner box. And it tested the power of operant conditioning and positive and negative reinforcement. He'd put the rat in the box, the rat would kind of just walk around, and it would accidentally hit this lever. And when it hit the lever, a piece of food would come out. So the rat eventually would learn that by hitting the lever, a piece of food would come out, so he'd get a snack. And that's positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is just as powerful as negative reinforcement, which is when Skinner would put the rat in. And these are electric coils right here, which wouldn't completely shock the rat, but would make it really uncomfortable. So the rat was walking around really uncomfortably and accidentally hit, say, like another lever over here, and that lever would turn off the electricity. So eventually, after a few times of this, Skinner would put the rat in, and the rat would immediately go over and press the lever to turn off the electricity.
Innate behaviors are behaviors that are inherited through genes or can be learned through interactions with the environment. Genetically based behaviors should increase an individual's fitness or reproductive success. Instinct is a behavior that is innate or inherited. An example of an instinct is the grip of a baby. An example of instinct can be seen in mammals when the female parent cares for her offspring. Also, if you were to put your fingers near a baby's hand, it would grip onto it. However, if you put your fingers next to the toes of the baby, it would also try to grip onto this. This is instinct because the baby was born with this behavior.
Imprinting, which was first described by Konrad Lorenz, is said to occur when innate behaviors are released in response to alert stimuli. Most imprinting promotes survival of newborn animals and shapes their future breeding activities. Imprinting has a number of characteristics, which are 1. The critical sensitive period in which a newborn will learn important behaviors. 2. Imprinting is irreversible. 3. Imprinting establishes an individual animal's preference for a certain species. 4. Some behaviors are affected more by imprinting than others. And lastly, stressful stimuli fortify imprinting. Ethologist Konrad Lorenz discovered that during the first day of life, or the critical period for the gray-lag gosling, it will accept any moving object as its mother. Another example is that during early life, the odors of a salmon's birthplace are imprinted on it. Therefore, it gives birth to its young at that location.
Okay, so observational learning occurs when an animal copies the behavior of another animal without having any experience prior to the positive reinforcement with that behavior. Observational learning is learning that occurs through observing the behavior of others. This can be observed with baby monkeys and people. A man can hold up a baby monkey up to him and stick his tongue out. And in some cases, the baby monkey will copy the man and also stick his tongue out.
A fixed action behavior are innate behaviors that follow a regular, unvarying pattern. Fixed action behaviors are initiated by a specific stimulus and are typically carried out to completion. It is typically carried out to completion even if the original intent of the behavior can no longer be fulfilled. An example of a fixed action pattern can be seen in the gray-eyed goose. When a gray-eyed goose sees an egg outside its nest, it goes through a maneuver of actions with its beak in order to get the egg back inside its nest. The egg outside the nest is the stimulus. However, if you put another object outside the nest that resembles the egg, it will go through the same exact motions with its beak in order to get the egg back inside the nest.
One of the major problems many animals must confront is how to find their way around the world. For example, to know where a particular resource is and how to get to it from their present location, or what is a safe route home to avoid a predator. Such spatial learning may cover only the highly restricted confines of an animal's home range or territory, or it may embrace a migration route of several hundreds or even thousands of miles. Nicholas Tinbergen observed that wasps associate nearby markers, like pine cones, with the location of their nests. When Tinbergen removed the markers, the wasps were unable to find their nests.
Insight occurs when an animal is exposed to a new situation without any prior relevant experience and performs a behavior that generates a desirable outcome. An example of insight would be, say there are a pile of bananas that this monkey couldn't reach. The monkey would take a box, stand on top of it, and realize it can't reach the bananas. However, it will then take another box, put it on top, and still can't reach bananas. He'll put another box on top, but then the stack will fall over. So then he'll realize he needs to put another box at the bottom, at the base, in order for the stack not to fall. And eventually, the monkey will be able to reach the pile of bananas.
Habituation is an extremely simple form of learning in which an animal, after a period of exposure to a stimulus, stops responding. Sea anemones pull food into their mouths by withdrawing their tentacles. If you place a non-food item like a stick near the tentacle, after several attempts to capture the stick, which it thinks is food, the sea anemone will eventually ignore the stimulus. Another example of habituation can be seen in prairie dogs. When in the presence of danger, such as a predator, a prairie dog will let out a loud scream to warn the others. If a human approaches a prairie dog, at first it will scream. However, after the human continuously approaches the prairie dog without any signs of intent to harm, the prairie dog will stop screaming.
Hope.
You.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.